Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Managing Experience for Media, Web, Mobile, and Video. Before we begin, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded, and a recording will be sent to you after the fact, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time. If you have any questions, please ask them in the questions panel in the GoToWebinar control panel on your right-hand side of your screen. And moreover, there will also be a brief survey about the webinar. If you have any feedback for us or any additional questions, you can do so there. With that, I'd like to introduce Andy Wetzler, who will be speaking for us today. And with that, I'll hand it over to him.
Thanks, Jackson. Everyone, this is Andy Wetzel from New Relic. Just wanted to talk to you today about managing media performance and web, mobile, video, and one thing we won't do in the discussion today is really go over New Relic, who we are, what we do, and our products. On our website, you can go get that info. There's a lot of other webinars that focus on that, but for anyone that's not familiar with New Relic at all, what we do is we have a digital intelligence platform that allows you to understand the performance of your code no matter where it runs. On the back end, apps in Node, Java, .NET, Go, Python, PHP, whether that be on-premise, in the cloud, or both. Also, code that runs in browsers and native mobile applications. And we then provide an analytics layer that will allow you to understand the performance end-to-end, understand the customer experience, and then even measure the business outcomes that result from those customer experiences. So once again, if you want to learn more about specific New Relic products, feel free to go to our site, newrelic.com, and previous webinars. Where we'll focus today is, once again, some tips and an approach to help you put together an analytics and monitoring strategy for media. And these topics, so you have these 9 topics that we're going to hit, that if you're looking at the screen, I'm sure you've read already. Each of these topics could maybe warrant their own 15, 20-minute or hour-long presentation. So we'll be going over each of them pretty quickly, and hopefully sparking some interest in some or all. So we're going to hit back-end workflow and service monitoring, page optimization, mobile app optimization, and going into, for video, player performance and then the video quality of service. Things like viewer engagement, content status, customer activation, and then putting it together into the biggest picture of all, which is looking at all of these things holistically through an analytics and KPI framework. This is focused on media with a focus on video as well, but I think that this applies also to, or I know it applies to, if you have ad-supported website, these concepts apply. Also, if video is being used in many different organizations and companies, not just media. We're talking to a lot of customers who use video for their online or their employee training programs. So this will apply to any type of application or site where you have content that matters, that you're trying to deliver video or monetize content in other ways. All right, so for the back-end workflow and service monitoring, what you really want to do is look at your back-end workflows as you go from your author to your audience and understand, what are those workflows and how can you ensure that each of those processes are working well. And here's an architecture, and the reason that's in quotes is this is not really maybe a comprehensive or even particularly accurate media architecture. It's just an example flow, almost like a back of the napkin sketch actualized in a PowerPoint. And so what we can do here is think about, once again, when you have the author here at the bottom right and they're creating content, maybe you're creating content within your organization, you have third-party content that's going to be ingested, and that's going to go into your different workflow processes, and these obviously could have many different names, but at a really high level, just your preparation to do your transcoding and metadata and things like that, then to your content management systems. And these could be a combination of cloud, on-premise, maybe you're using an online video platform for this, online, it could be a cloud-based content management system or on-premise. These could be applications and workflows that you have on-premise today, you're looking to move to the cloud, so there's infinite permutations there, but once again, the idea is to get the content from where you're ingesting it or creating it and get it delivered out to the audience as fast as possible. So in the example of something like a news site, obviously if you have breaking news, you want a new article to get to the audience as fast as possible, and you want that to happen seamlessly. You don't want to have any errors along the line. So if you have anything that's going wrong in any of these workflows, it might be that you end up with an issue that's evidenced in the audience, the audience engagement. Either say it is a website where users are uploading content. If your upload processes aren't working well, you might find that you have lower user engagement, or maybe you're losing subscriptions or your new subscriptions drop as a result. If you're doing playout for a streaming OTT offering and the quality of service is really poor, you might see a drop in subscriptions, or your trial to buy conversion rate will go down. And then also one other thing I want to hit, obviously, that I want to remind, obviously there are a lot of other services that exist for fulfilling these types of experiences for customers, not just the content ingestion and playout, but also things like, for another example, in the OTT world, if you're searching for content, what services on the back end is that hitting? What about your authentication to log in? Things like authenticating through your cable provider, a recommendation engine that's going to get a customer to watch more content. So all those things are really important. All of these things have to work well. They have to work in concert together. And what we can do at New Relic is really help you monitor all of it and to focus a bit on what you want to do for these back-end workflows. Once again, just understand what are the KPIs. What do you care about for these workflows? Think about them as kind of almost a state machine. What is going to happen? What's the beginning state of it? What's the end state? What do you want to happen as a result of that? If it's uploads, maybe you want to have how many have we completed within a period of time? Do we have any errors for that? How long is the average upload time? So once you get an idea for what is you should expect for this performance, you can start to alert off of abnormal activity. If you start to see errors in any of these workflows, you will understand something's happening that you need to go investigate. So once you have an idea of what you want to track as part of these processes, you can create these KPIs, put them in the analytics dashboard, and then for any of those applications that you're monitoring, you can use traditional New Relic APM to diagnose any issues that you're having. If you're having errors, you're having slowness, you can use our solutions to go into those apps and diagnose the performance of the code, be it in the code that you have written and run, third-party services you might call out to in the database itself. So really it'll allow you to optimize the performance, scalability, and availability, as well as the quality and correctness of those applications. All right, and once again, something else you can do as we go on that a lot of our customers do, think of just the error use case for that whole publishing engine and that flow that I just showed. Maybe you want to create a dashboard that says, if something's bad and you don't want to have it happen, like errors, set up a dashboard where 0 is good. And something you can look at real quick and say, okay, if something's not 0 on this, let's go take a look at it. What's happening there? So real quick on those back-end workflows, how to optimize, create a KPI strategy, optimize the apps with something like New Relic APM. Now, in media, more than maybe any other type of application, the front end is incredibly important. So, availability issues more often than not happen on the back end. So if you're going to have something that's going to affect, hey, the site is down, the stream is down, most of the time those issues happen on the back end. But once your availability is strong and you've got that dialed in, your performance issues actually tend to jump and exist on the front end. What I mean by that is, for an average transaction, 80 to 90% of the time from a customer perspective happens inside the browser or the native mobile application. So if you want to reduce the amount of time for an ad to be in front of your users' eyeballs, or for a time to first frame on a video, the more that you can optimize the time inside of your browser or mobile apps, the more you'll get great benefit there. So there's a few things that I've seen that are listed here, which is, if you think about what it takes on a page to load, you're loading the document object model, then the page will load so that it's visible to the user, and then maybe you're lazy loading a lot of content below the fold, and then you have the player load. Those are all things you can and should monitor, and by measuring those types of values, you'll have the ability to manage them going forward. The DOM load is a really expensive operation, so that's one of the reasons why single page applications are so popular, and many organizations are moving to those either an infinite scroll type metaphor and paradigm, or others, because you're not reloading the page, right? So you can, with the user actions, the content is and stays in front of the user much faster. So a couple things that you can do there, once again, is take these KPIs from a page perspective and really start to measure them and manage them. So if you're in a traditional page view paradigm, understand how long it takes for your DOM ready, meaning how long did it take for the DOM to load. That's the best case scenario for a user getting something visible to them. Truth be told, probably the user still can't see anything at that point, but if you can still reduce that time, the onload time, which is when users can see, it's kind of like the above the fold or the viewport time, that will reduce as well. So understand that viewport time, and then things like player load time, which is here on this graph. So in some organizations I've worked with, when you're talking about a video streaming application, if something happens and goes wrong, someone that's in operations that's responsible for customer experience of the streaming application has really a kind of a dizzying array of questions to be able to have to answer. Is it due to the streaming availability from the back-end video application? Is it have to do with the CDN? Is it something that has to do with the page that is broken? Is it something that has to do with the player that's broken? Or is it something that actually has to do with the content? Maybe there's something simply bad about the content itself. So being able to have a measurement for all those different types of variables is really powerful, to be able to give you a view to understand where to optimize, and if something goes wrong, where to improve. And this is an example where, for a browser, you can use New Relic browser to do the optimizations there. When we use New Relic browser on an unoptimized page, typically it's about 20 to 30% of page loads have JavaScript errors, and we're able to get that down to about 3 to 4% usually before the return on investment of trying to bring more errors out of the equation just isn't there anymore. And also page load times, I've seen many customers go from that kind of viewport time being 9 to 10 seconds down to 3, 2, and less. So using something like New Relic browser, which will allow you to segment those response times and then diagnose how to fix those, really powerful. All right, and then on the error side as well, as I said, having the ability to understand JavaScript errors for all of your users on your of your app and your site is extremely powerful, right? Think about having the Google Chrome developer diagnostics view, but for every one of your users, so that you can see on your site. First, optimize it down to that 2, 3, 4% range from the 20 to 30, and then every day someone should be checking this to make sure that a new build didn't introduce more errors. So once again, really extremely powerful. And going on the same paradigm exists with mobile apps. Mobile apps are kind of very similar to, but at the same time very different to a web page, obviously. A lot of the timing is still, and the approach that you would have for the timing is similar, but it also has the concept of the app itself crashing, right? So you want to have the visibility into that. So when you are optimizing this type of performance, you once again want to break it down into something like, okay, how long does it take for the app to load? How long does it take the player to load? How long does it take the content to load? How long does it take an app to load? And if you're able to break it down in those areas, you'll be able to know where you need to optimize, but also if something's not working well, you'll know who to involve to improve that. So from a New Relic perspective, once again, mobile is very similar in the fact that you can break down these timings and get those timings into dashboards and measure and manage that way, but also from a crash perspective, right? Are you having crashes before the video even starts or before the player starts, right? Or is the player causing the app to crash? Or is something with the content causing, after the content loading, is that causing it to crash? So I just give crashes as an example because that type of issue is going to be the most impactful on the user engagement and user satisfaction. Once you get beyond, it's almost like, congratulations, your app doesn't crash anymore. Then you can get into the fact where you can really optimize performance, right? If you want to use a metric like time to first frame for video, you can, once again, if you're breaking it down into how long does it take the app to even launch? How long does it take for me to put my logo screen onto that? How long does it take me for the player itself to load inside my mobile app? And then if it's an autoplay, how long does it take for that content to load, and how long do I get the time to first frame? And you can start to measure all of that and optimize it. And that leads into, once again, the player performance. And this is part and parcel of what we just talked about for page and for the app, but it's its own separate category as well. And why I use this example, and I referenced it before, is I've worked with companies where when there's a problem, they might be a really large company that has multiple brands, and across those brands they have different page templates, they have different players that they're using, they even have different backend content fulfillment engines. And if something happens where the customer isn't able to access a page or a stream, it's unsatisfied, the page team might say, hey, the page is fine, and the page team will say it might be the player, and the player team says, hey, the player is fine, and then they say maybe it's the content, and so having the player itself and player performance as metrics as well will allow you to work with either you have an internally developed player, you have a third-party player that you're using, but doing things like measuring time to first frame, breaking it down into the different categories will allow you to know who to talk to, and one of those constituents is going to be the player developer. Either it's internal or it could be a third-party organization. We've also worked with customers at different times when they're doing an evaluation of which player that they want to use, or they've decided to make a change from one player to another, and we've helped them by instrumenting inside the player to get those measurements where they can start to see which player works better for them based on their particular use case and their particular needs. So having a perspective on what it means to have player performance is very powerful and important as well. All right. So continuing on, video quality of service. So what's happened so far, if we're extend the metaphor of a user trying to access content, the backend workflows are working great. It goes from author, has you've ingested content, you transcoded it, you've delivered it out to CDNs, it's ready for your users to view, and they've launched the page. The page launches really well. and then the player launches flawlessly, and the content loads, and all of a sudden now it's buffering, right? So you have all these things that have to go right for customer experience to be a high quality, but only one thing has to go wrong for a customer to have a poor experience. So now you have the video quality of service. Maybe the customer exits before the video even starts, and you want to understand why. Maybe once again, what's the buffer ratio, the amount of time spent buffering to the amount of time spent playing? Are there a lot of bit rate changes, right? Maybe you don't have enough predefined renditions, or you're not sending the right renditions to the user based on their device type and their connection speed. So these are the type of thing from a video call service that you want to be able to take a look at. And once again, you want to understand when a stream or a video is playing, what's the quality of that experience? Are there issues you're getting? You're getting, play errors that are happening during the player. You're getting those buffer ratios. So once again, another set of KPIs that you want to look at. But I think now, hopefully, the repetition of the theme is filling in, that you're starting to get to the part that, like, okay, for the video type and quality that we have and how we're delivering it, or the proper CDN for a particular region, and the proper quality for a user's device and connection type is going to lead to the best possible playback quality. But then, okay, how are the users actually engaging? So now the content is playing, so you might want to say, okay, everything's gone right, users are playing, how are they engaging? Which users do we have? Where are they coming from? What are they viewing? How many, and how many based on what we expected? Is this a live stream? So we're looking at how many users are viewing right now, or we're looking at this historically. So you can create also analytics based on how many active users you have, where they're coming from. Are they mobile web, native mobile? Are they desktop web? What content? What genres? What are the popular channels on a streaming, but kind of a linear paradigm channel based? Okay, so that's just once again, once the customers are viewing the streams, you want to look at how they're engaging, and then also the content status. So understand things like, where are people trying to get the content from? In other words, what are they searching for? Where are they coming from? Are they coming from different platforms? Are they getting things from the carousel? Are they getting things from a direct search, or are they getting things from a direct link? So these things where you're understanding, all right, we know what users are watching. Now, how are they getting to that information? So we can marry up that information to get what people are most viewing into the channel the way that they're most looking for it. So we're matching up the most popular content with the most popular way of finding it and consuming it. So one example might be to ensure that the carousels for a streaming offering are populated with the most popular content based on a particular geographic region. So that will improve your user engagement that we talked about, where users will log in and see content that is specific to them and specific to their area, and that will be more likely that they'll start watching something. All right, so you're able to view the performance here of users as they are accessing assets from different perspectives, from in this example, carousels. And then you can also see where these streams are coming from, right? And understand, once again, the performance and how to optimize your user engagement. All right, so customer activation. This is a little bit specialized in the case of a subscription-supported business or site. So in this case, you're talking about, all right, it's very important if we're providing a new offering. We've also worked with a lot of customers who They might be ad supported, and they've been ad supported for a long time, but they want to go to a subscription supported model, either entirely or for a particular portion. They want to maybe have a free ad supported version, but they also want to have either premium content on a subscription offering, or they want to have no ad load with subscription for customers who want that. So it's very important also. This is now the subscription process, or customer journey, if you will, is really kind of a different process, right, than viewing content. And we'll talk more about this later on because it's really important. You want the ability to understand, okay, if customers are signing up, is that working? So when a customer comes in, yeah, I would love to trial this service. I'm going to put in my username. I'm going to put in my information. I'm going to create a username. I'm going to sign up for the trial. How many steps are involved in that? Are they all working well? So each one of those steps is a customer interaction that you want to monitor. And those could all be hitting disparate backend services. So they do want to make sure that those backend services that we talked about earlier are working really well. And another way to think about it, and I'll reinforce this later on, is at the point that the customer says, yes, I want to sign up, you want to understand how often does that succeed from the back-end fulfillment perspective, and how often does that fail? How many errors do I get when someone wants to sign up? And what are those errors, right? Sometimes people might assume, changing this example to logging in. I worked with a customer once and they said, we have about, an 87% success rate on logins, but most of those are people putting in the wrong logins. And then once we started to track it, they realized that only about 7% of those were failed logins, and the rest were actually errors. So they had to understand why those errors were occurring and fixing those. But for teams that we've worked with, if you're on a development team, you're on an operations team, or a marketing team, or maybe you're the application owner, you're the person that's responsible for launching a new OTT offering, or you're the person responsible for taking an offering from ad-supported to having subscription-supported options. And you are responsible for, okay, how many subscriptions that are essentially sold within a period of time. You want to work from a cross-functional perspective to understand that data in real time. And this is something I can't believe I'm about a half hour into this without saying that all of the analytics that we talked about are real time. And I think that's a real difference for the customers that I've worked with in the past, where you might get, there's certainly this data is going to exist from a subscription perspective in some part of an organization, but often the IT teams, the development teams, the operations teams, and others get that data in arrears. They get that data either a month after or a week after, or maybe even just a day after, but all of those are unacceptable. You really want to get this data live, right? And you want to understand, if you have an event where you are turning the switch on and say, okay, we have an event where we have this new service, sign up today, we're going to give you actually 2 months free with your subscription if you do that. Big marketing campaign. You want to understand if that's working. You want marketing, you want development, you want operations, all in one room, watching these types of funnels, and understanding how everything's working, and if it's not working, how to fix it or optimize it really quickly. Okay, so how do you bring this all together? And this kind of culminates into a strategy that you can put in place to really do all these things that we were talking about. And this is when it says you bring it all together, but actually, really you start here without being too cliche. This is kind of the traditional begin with the end in mind type approach, where what you really want to have is a comprehensive framework for which KPIs you're going to measure across all of these different areas. And if you're able to set this up from kind of a top-down perspective for your organization or your group or your project, you'll be really successful. And what it'll allow you to do is understand what you would expect any team to be able to report as far as the performance or availability, customer experience, and business outcomes. And that will allow you to collaborate within teams, but also between teams in a really clear way. And a way of doing this is, and I'm going to actually show some of this dashboard live and some examples, but this could be an example of a dashboard that has things like revenue on it, which I haven't talked about at all before, but simply something simple as ad revenue. And this doesn't have to be that, it doesn't have to be that accurate necessarily. It just has to be a representation. You can say, okay, for a particular page that we load, you can answer the question, okay, what's the number of page views per session that I have? Okay, maybe it's 1.6, right? It's 1.4. You say, like, 70% of my views, 80% of my views are my core homepage. It's this main, the kind of root domain, if you will. Okay, so let's just really simply say that has 4 ad slots on it. That template has 4 ad slots that should be viewed for every page view if that page view takes less than 5 seconds, right? So you can easily create that type of analysis here and report on just some sort of average CPM rate that you're getting, that you have some level of ad revenue. And it does, like I said, this number doesn't have to be gospel, but if you're repeatable in how you measure it, then you can make useful conclusions based on the trends. Okay, so if you see something drop week over week, you say, wow, what's happening? Why is this happening? Okay, it could be all of a sudden you loaded bad creative into the page, and all of a sudden the page is loading much, much more slowly, right? That we've had customers have that happen as well. We've had customers say that they did an ad campaign, and the creative team, once again, put the wrong URL in the click. So the ad, those click-throughs were only getting 404 errors, and none of them hit the site. And they only realized that about 3 weeks in. That's the benefit of having this real time, right? So we'll talk more about the dashboards. This is where you would want to get to from a strategy perspective. But really, how do you get there? All right, how do you start? So one way could be to start with a framework. Now, this is a big wall of text, but it's really a lot of the things that I was already talking about. It's taking all those areas that we spoke about and distilling those into a few KPIs and saying, okay, for my backend workflows, what matters to me? Upload successful, upload failed, how long did it take? Right, the 3 things. For video, how many times was it played? For how long? What was the bit rate and buffering time? For something that we haven't addressed but is important as well, something like DevOps. If you're going to DevOps in one way, shape, or form, and everyone is. So how many builds do I have? How many commits and deploys have I done? So this type of framework you can put in place, and then the different teams can start working on, how do I capture this data? And not all of it's going to be with New Relic, right? We don't have something that captures everything you'll need, but we can put this framework together with you. And then if there's something you want to do to complement some of this data with third-party data and other solutions that you use, that's also very common. So in order to put this type of KPI framework into place, what you want to do is really focus on the business goals. Okay, and this, not everyone, I'm sure that's in the audience today is responsible for how many impressions, per day, per brand or per page, or what's your share of audience. If you're an OTT offering, what's your share of audience for the key demographic that you're going after, or how many subscriptions you get. But absolutely, organizations that focus their teams on a small set of business-centric KPIs will ultimately be the most successful. Because if you're able to take any of the KPIs that you measure at a functional level, and you know how they relate to the business outcomes, then the teams will be working all towards the same goal. And you have a much better chance of being successful. So first, understand that just a few business goals that you're targeting. And then once you determine those business goals, you identify what are the key customer journeys. When we talked about customer activation, that's when I said I would talk about it in a little more detail. So I showed a lot of dashboards, and we don't have the time. I'll hit a few, I think, time permitting, but still it's going to be at a pretty high level. But what you want to think about when you're doing this type of analysis is, what are the customer journeys and customer user stories that my application is built to support? If it's a sign-up journey, the user's going to go to their device or their browser and select a trial type. They're probably going to enter their information, select a payment type if they need to, or put in the payment information, and then they might start watching, right? They want to watch right away. So they're going to have a title and the video start information. So for each of those steps, each of those are something discretely that you want to measure. And you want to measure how many people are doing it. What are some of the attributes I want to capture that are part of this, like the trial type, the customer's zip code, or their payment method, right? And this is something where, if you have when I subscribed to HBO Now, I fulfilled it through Roku. So, what's the fulfillment channel in a different different vertical? When I pay for my Starbucks app, I do it through Apple Pay, right? So you can start to see what's, things like payment method. Are some more popular than others, so that you make sure that those are refined. And so just like for viewing content, right? What is the device, the refer? If users searching for something, what's their search? What are they looking at? Maybe they're sharing information. What are they doing within the session? So if you think about those customer journeys, the customer journey is supported by the applications, obviously. And then the end of any successful customer journey is a positive business outcome. So if you're always focused on the customer journey and the customer, you're necessarily going to connect your applications to the business outcomes. Remember, the business outcomes are what I said starting off is what you really want to be focused on. So that's how you connect those two together. So before we get into questions, I'm going to actually go in and show this is kind of how this could look live. And this is an example of a dashboard that is putting that type of KPI strategy into use, and a lot of those concepts that I was talking about earlier on. Taking a dashboard and what you want to do when you're creating these and when you're putting together this type of strategy is think, for a dashboard perspective, who's going to use this? Who's the audience for this dashboard? You don't want it to be so broad that everyone that uses it is confused. So you say this might be an executive dashboard, or for a product owner who's responsible for things like revenue, and they need to know if they have revenue at risk to something like downtime or errors. And then what questions can you ask and answer based on this dashboard? I can ask and answer, hey, revenue trends, what are they? What's my subscription conversion rate right now? Those are questions I can answer based on looking at this. Okay, I have revenue at risk to downtime. Maybe I have some synthetic checks that are set up and they're hitting the website, and 4% of the time it's down. So we have some revenue from an ad perspective we might be losing. So I can say, wow, I have some revenue at risk. Those are questions I can answer based on this. Second, what actions am I going to take based on this? Maybe if I see that there's an issue with pages, I'm going to go and talk to someone on my team that's responsible for the page performance and availability, and I'm going to ask them, hey, why are we having these 404s or these 500 errors on my pages? Okay, so those are the actions that I'm going to take. And how do those actions benefit? Okay, so this action in this case would benefit the fact that if I'm having an availability issue with key pages and the right teams are identified and we fix that, then I'm going to recapture the revenue that would have been lost. So that's kind of at a high level what you always want to think about when you're creating these. Who's the audience? What questions will they ask and answer? What actions will they take based on those answering those questions? and how will those actions benefit the organization and the group. All right, so you have an executive type view like this. You can have that page performance view as well, right? So I talked about the benefit and the importance of having page performance and understanding for ad-supported sites, or for, obviously for video streaming. Optimizing a page for media is so important, right? And can you understand what's your number of page loads with a greater than 3-second load time, as an example? You might say, hey, we've optimized our pages for viewport time to be less than 3 seconds, but I still want to know how many of them are above 3 seconds, because of the other work that we've shown for our customer analytics will show if that viewport time is greater than 3 seconds, the engagement rate will linearly reduce, and our ad viewability is also greatly reduced. You can really quickly and easily see which of the pages are affected. And then so you can say, okay, I want to go, it's just, homepage is really slow. What are we doing? Maybe, and I hate to say it's always, the ad creative team or the marketing team, but you never know. Maybe someone uploaded an image. We see this all the time. Everyone's seen it, right? An image that wasn't optimized, and all of a sudden the page is really slow. Or there's a new JavaScript on the page and it hasn't been optimized either. Or maybe a bunch of JavaScript are put on the page and they really should be combined into one. There's a lot of things that you can do. From the ad side, this isn't I didn't make this a focus of the discussion today, but more and more, same with video, but ads as well, is an area where customers are kind of asking us as New Relic to see how we can help them do more. So customers have taken our API that exists for browser as an example, with the JavaScript API, and they've instrumented their pages to understand how long ads are taking to load. And they've gone so far in the programmatic realm that if to the extent that the information is available to them, they might get something like a creative ID to understand what's actually being loaded, how long it takes. So that can help them really optimize their ad performance. And skipping over like the mobile and OTT, some of the stuff we showed before, how many of our sessions are interacting with video? Where are people coming from, right? Sometimes we'll talk to customers and that there's a big surprise, or it just, you have your known knowns and your known unknowns and your unknown unknowns, and sometimes there's things that you think and you confirm them with data. There's things you never expected that all of a sudden you'll see inside the data. We had a customer working with very recently where for a particular event there was a huge number of people coming from Arabic speaking locations or to their Arabic site. And it was a huge bump from what they had before. So they were able to ask the question of, hey, is this valid traffic? They looked at the versions of the browsers. Some things were like Phantom.js, so they said maybe that's a bot. They had things that are older versions of Chrome, maybe those are bots. But even when we cleaned out what was a bot or not, they still had a huge bump from those different locations. So it's a great thing. They wanted to understand why they had such a bump in the interest, but the only downside was the performance of that page was very, very slow. So they had the two things: good news, bad news. A lot more interest. Bad news, performance wasn't great. So these types of dashboards, once again, what they will really allow you to do is to understand that things, confirm the things you're expecting and see a lot of things maybe you weren't expecting. But most importantly, it allows you to create a common set of evidence that all the teams within your organization can use that evidence to have data-driven discussions. And once again, you can create a performance culture where teams are able to collaborate internally, but also between the teams based on their own local KPIs and goals, but most importantly, all in service of these higher level business-centric KPIs and goals. Okay, so a lot of info. Hope it was helpful, and I'm going to open it up now for any questions that we had that came in through the chat interface.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, great presentation. as we let the questions flow in. I know we don't have a whole lot of time for questions. I just wanted to mention that we have Future Stack New York coming up in September on the 13th and 14th. And this is actually a great place to learn a lot of what practitioners are doing and the dashboards that they're using. And some of the examples that Andy pulled from are, precisely where we learn, how people are actually using some of these dashboards and understanding their digital business. But moving on, it doesn't look like we have any questions that we're going to be able to answer, I guess, concisely here. If you do have any questions, please feel free to submit them still, and we'll follow up after the fact. And we'll make sure to get these answered. Just real quick, a quick question here. Are these dashboards available as a sample set so we can look at them, or how do we get examples of these?
Yeah, definitely. Some of these dashboards, the best way would be to just contact New Relic, and we can show you these, because Insights, they're no out of the box dashboards. So, but there's something that we can share with you if you're evaluating the solution, or you're already a New Relic user. It's really easy for us to give you these dashboards. So certainly we can provide them as samples. All the ones that I showed live were purely demo data. So we're able to show you those and give you examples as well.
And I know we're running up here on time. Let's see if we can answer a few more questions. What level of effort is required to capture the video specific to the info that you showed?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Jackson. So what level of effort is required to
capture
get
the video specific info you showed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the level of effort varies, but I'll give a couple examples. So for HTML5, we have a JavaScript that you can add in to our browser JavaScript, and that will capture the video events that are coming out with minimal amount of effort. We have the same level of support for some out-of-the-box players, and we've also done the same for mobile players and some of the connected devices. But we're still working on building out all of our support for all the different devices. So depending on the player you have and the devices you need, there might be a little bit more effort to capture the data out with the APIs, but that's really also pretty nominal effort. We've had customer, before we started to work on creating specific support and instrumentation, we've had customers go in and create their own instrumentation on their own across multiple devices. So it's really nominal effort, even if you have to do some tailored instrumentation to get it. And then you capture these events out, send them the insights, and it's easy to create those dashboards. Or once again, we can provide you with examples that you might want to use.
Great. And just a quick sort of follow-up question for that. Are the video performance metrics collected through existing browser and mobile capabilities?
Yes. So it uses the existing mobile and browser APIs to capture the data as events to send them into Insights. But you'd have to engage. If you're interested in doing video monitoring, what I'd recommend is that if you're either a prospective or existing New Relic customer, just engage with the sales representative you have, and we can talk with you more about it, because we would have to learn a little bit more about the player you're using or the players that you're using, and how to get you all set up with the video event capture.
Great. So I just want to be cautious of time now. If we didn't get to your question, we'll follow up after the fact via email. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to let us know in the survey, and you can give us feedback, general feedback about the webinar as well. So I appreciate you all's time, and Andy, thank you for the presentation.
Thanks, Jackson. My pleasure.
Thanks, everyone. and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.